Welcome back to Leadership Lessons They Never Teach You. This is Lesson 2. Leadership is stewardship, not control. Where we get into why the tighter you grip an outcome, the less freedom you actually have. What if the thing you're exhausting yourself trying to control was never yours to control in the first place? Only yours to steward. For a long time I wanted to rule with a closed fist. I wanted to control, if I'm honest. And the title gave me a sense of importance. That was essentially this outside-in approach before I had words to describe it. And this showed up most clearly in how I managed my team, how instead of delegating, I would micromanage. And I was anxiety-driven. I was hovering over people that I should have trusted in their domain of genius. I wasn't amplifying anyone's strengths, and I was slowing my team down, slowing the company down. I was quietly sabotaging it because I was disempowering the people in it, and also myself. I was trying to man all these different departments and people and their jobs, and it was exhausting, to be honest. I was miserable, I was frustrated, and I just felt like things weren't working. And obviously, it's a natural thing to then start pointing fingers. And it's never the leader's fault, it's always the people around the leader. Well, evidently. And so I was leading with fear. I was overly focused on compliance. And everyone around me felt that. They felt that dis-ease, that distrust, and that disconnect. And that's essentially what fear does when it's sitting on top of a team. But the part that really exposed this pattern and the way in which I was leading was when I actually brought this home. And I was micromanaging my relationship. I was micromanaging my kids. I was micromanaging myself. I was looking at what my partner was doing and trying to manage that in my checklist, and we each had our domains which we had to control, and there was always just uncertainty, there was edge, there was dis-ease in our space. And I never afforded anyone else to take ownership or accountability for their parts. I would have to take it on for them. And that rigidity affected my relationship with my partner and my kids, and more so myself. And when I realized that micromanaging a relationship and micromanaging a family and micromanaging a team wasn't a healthy form of leadership, I had to explore other options. So I came across this term called stewardship. And what stewardship meant to me essentially was, it wasn't necessarily about owning the outcome and the people around the outcome. It was about being able to actually sit on the same side of the table with the people that you are journeying with and responsible to. Recognize that you're moving towards something together. You're on a similar path. You're only in this role for a season, as a business owner, as a parent, as a partner, a husband, a wife, a friend. And that sat with me because it changed what I was optimizing for, because I was optimizing just for outcome. I wasn't optimizing for legacy. I was selfish on my own journey without recognizing that there are other people who are sharing that journey with me, and there will be people after me. And that would essentially change how I approach my business, team, and relationship. So it really stops about being about the moment that you're in versus what you leave behind. So leadership is not about controlling outcomes. It's about stewarding responsibility. Control is an illusion. You were never actually controlling the outcome. You were just playing a role within it. Stewardship, on the other hand, shifts the lens to influence, which allows you to create a sense of inner freedom, because you're able to own what is yours and let go of what is not. And there's a clearer why behind the process. And Mike O'Neill puts this paradox into context. He says, it's not up to you, but it's also not up to you. And most leaders exhaust themselves living on the wrong side of that line, trying to control and exhaust themselves with things that are not in their control versus letting go or paying minimal attention to the things that are meaningful, important, and essentially in their hands. So the clearest way to differentiate control and stewardship. Control is focused on what? Stewardship is focused on the why. So think of control as you're focusing on the tasks, the KPIs, the outcomes, and you move into stewardship with the why, which is focused on protecting the purpose, the culture, and the trust underneath it. Control tends to lean into the power over people to quell the underlying anxiety of lack of self-worth or a sense of safety, whilst stewardship leans towards power on the people, which essentially amplifies the team versus capping it. Control reaches for fear and compliance, and that rigidity essentially stifles growth. Stewardship builds the kind of psychological safety and trust where there's no need for compliance. Control hands people a rigid script. Stewardship points people back towards themselves to lean into their own discernment and internal judgment system. And this connects back to the identity, behavior, personality piece. And if you think about control, that is a personality function. There's this armor, this protective armor for safety. And if you go back to lesson 1, we were looking at how the personality was overworking to prove self-worth. Well, in this case, the personality is now over-controlling to lessen the feeling of uncertainty. Stewardship is what leadership looks like once that armor relaxes. Being able to trust the people in the process enough to hold responsibility without needing to hold the outcome. So here's the question I want to leave you with this week. What are you gripping tightly right now that you were only ever given for a season? And what would it look like to steward it instead of own it? I'll see you in the next episode. Cheers.